Hi, family. Thank you so much for joining me for this very first episode of the Uplifting Relationships podcast. I am just beyond delighted that you are joining me for this very first episode. So, with that being said, I want to give you an overview of kind of what to expect from our podcast here with respect to our approach and the types of episodes that you'll see here. So, our approach is three pronged with uplifting relationships. So first, we are very much so practical, and really thinking about what are the practical steps and strategies that you can utilize to uplift your most treasured relationships. And we'll talk a lot about marriage. That might be due to my background. I'm a marriage and family therapist. I'm also a psychology professor, and I also study families. I'm a family researcher. I look a lot at fatherhood and father involvement. And so that may kind of highlight our second approach to uplifting relationships, which is very much so research-based. What has been proven to be effective when it comes to relationships, so that it's not just my opinion, like what has been proven across the literature with respect to what really promotes the health and well-being of relationships. Because this is the thing, is that it's not a secret. Right? We know based on the research what really is proven to help relationships, to restore relationships, and so it's not a secret. So I'm going to let you in on those things, right? And then lastly, I think that this is the most critical, powerful, transformative piece to this approach. And it is the biblical approach, because it's the word of God that truly does transform, right? And so we will definitely bring in some of those insights and wisdoms, because that's the greatest wisdom ever, right? So, you don't have the answers. Go to the one who does, which is the Lord, right? And so we have that three-pronged approach. Now, what can you expect here? So today's podcast, I'm going to go into our topic and what that is in just a moment. But today's podcast is an educational podcast. It's going to be informational. You'll definitely leave with some information that you can use to apply to your relationships today. Now, regardless of the type of episode, you are going to have an action step that you can use to transform and uplift your most treasured relationships. Okay. So it's the teacher in me. You're going to have some homework. I want it to be, of course, an easy listen, but I also want it to be something that you can use in your everyday life. Okay. So you'll have that aspect. And so today's, it's more so an educational podcast. Now, secondly, I'll also have some guests come in. I know some amazing people. As I was saying before, I'm a researcher, so I may invite some of my other researchers to come in and give us the facts on what really works when it comes to particular areas of relationships. Also, two other therapists. It's going to be, I can't wait. It's going to be absolutely dynamic as well. And other experts to come and share ways in which we can uplift our most treasured relationships. Also, too, I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you. I want to make sure that this information is spot on. So ask me questions, send in questions, send them in to info@upliftingrelationships.com. And I will have episodes where I actually answer your questions. There'll be Q&A episodes as well. And lastly, the ladies who are in my accountability group, I have a Speak Life Wives accountability group. We have just been getting so much out of the devotionals. And so those devotionals that I kind of write, I write devotionals for them at least 3 times a week. I may share a few here and there with you. Okay. So I just tell you, you're going to get a well-rounded education here at Uplifting Relationships. And it's all free. So listening will, not just be informational, but it could potentially be transformative for your relationships. So let's go ahead and dive on into today's topic, which is, what is the difference between wounded behavior in a relationship and healed behavior in a relationship? All right. And so as an overview today, I'm going to really lay the context. Why is this important? Why is it important to talk about, healed behavior and wounded behavior in a relationship? And so we're going to really kind of set the intention for today's podcast. And then, secondly, we're going to define it. What is unhealed behavior, or whether wounded behavior in a relationship? What is healed behavior? Because we all honestly want to be on a healing journey. Come on, health is so much more than just your physical health, right? Your mental health, your emotional health, right? And honestly, your relational health, and all of these factors impact one another, right? We want to have a holistic lens on our health. So we're going to be focused on that. What is the difference, right? And then we'll talk about what are the results in your relationships of each type of behavior, wounded behavior. What impact? What are the results of that? What impact and what are the results of healed behavior in your relationship? And then we're going to say, okay, now what do we do? What are the action steps to promote and progress us along in that healing journey? Okay, let's go ahead and dive right on in. So, just setting the intention. So, here's the thing, the reality, family, is that you've been in a relationship long enough, then that may be 5 minutes. We're dealing with another human being, and we are too. So we may offend our spouse, or we may offend our most, treasured relationship, whether it's a child or best friend or what have you, and they may offend us. And these wounds. Here's the thing: if these wounds aren't dealt with, come on, what happens is they can fester and they can cause infection, and they can impact the very health and the integrity of the relationship. And so what we want to do is, I say, you want to make it right, and you want to get to healing behavior as soon as possible. Think about the pain that you would endure if you had a cut and you didn't tend to it. So we don't want to endure that pain, but sometimes what happens is we will endure emotional pain for an extended period of time because we don't recognize that you have to actively pursue your healing. You have to actively behave in healed ways, even sometimes when you are in pain. Okay. And so that's the reality of a relationship. And we want to be able to get through those humps. We want to be able to get through those times where we may have offended. And here's the thing that I always say is that we've all have always been on both sides, whether we have offended or we've been offended. So this is, relevant for us all. Alrighty, so it's just so important when we're thinking about maintaining the health and the integrity of a relationship. And here's the thing: the reality about your marriage, the reality about any of your most treasured relationships, either it is growing and progressing, or there is atrophy. And your marriage and your relationship, it wants to eat. You know how it talks about give us this day our daily bread? It's like spiritually, we need to eat every day. And the same is true for your marriage. Like the good things, the healed behaviors, is not just a one-time occurrence. When it comes to the maintenance, we want to make sure that we are intaking the right things for the health and the integrity of the relationship. And that's exactly what healed behaviors do. I'm getting ahead of myself here. But that's what it does. And it has to be on a consistent basis, right? Because when we stop, it's like we stop feeding it. And anything we stop feeding, we will see atrophy. Okay, so that's just the intention. This is important. Okay, so this is definitely very important. And so now we're going to shift gears and think about, okay, what is healed behavior versus wounded behavior? And the reality is that healed behavior is actually in response to a wound. It's in response to a a rift. It's in response to something that didn't go your way in the relationship, okay? Because these behaviors, these healed behaviors, honestly, are kind of easy to do when there hasn't been an infraction. But when you can do these healed behaviors in the face of an infraction or in the face of something hard in the relationship, it is so extremely powerful, healing, and restorative. Okay, so let's just go into, I guess I'll start with the wounded behaviors first. Y'all want me to start with the wounded behaviors first? So when we're thinking about wounded behaviors, think about when you get wounded, right? When you get wounded, you kind of hold back, right? It's kind of like if you wound your leg or your knee, you're not gonna walk in your full stride anymore. It really kind of constricts you. Okay, it really does kind of constrict you, right? And so some of these are some indicators of wounded behavior, some things that you may see. Like if your perspective and you're seeing everything through the hurt, then that's potentially a wounded behavior. Not only are you seeing your relationship through that lens, you may even see other relationships. You may even see other people through that lens. Another wounded behavior is replaying and having on repetition the hurt. Okay, I'm actually going to do a forgiveness series because that's actually one of the healed behaviors. Oh my goodness, I'm getting ahead of myself. But I'm going to do a forgiveness series because when we're thinking about the health and integrity of a relationship, it's definitely dependent upon the ability to heal and forgive in that restoration process. Okay, so that replaying the hurt in your mind. So these are mental things that you may do. Another one is bargaining. Well, if I didn't say this, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Or you think you're trying to how to replay how to, prevent something from happening, but we're just all imperfect. And, also what is very characteristic about a person who's been wounded is that it distorts their identity. So they start to walk in a way that is a distortion of who they really are. Because a lot of times, a wound is trying to almost disfigure your character. It's trying to disfigure you, right? It's trying to steal your personhood. And the thing about it is that you don't want it to have that power. But here's another thing about wounded behavior. Sometimes our perspective can be a little bit off. And because of that perspective being off, sometimes we can even inflict our own pain. Right. And so that mindset piece is also very important in that. I remember I tell you about a little wound I had. And it's like it's in the physical. So I'm kind of overzealous, right? And I've been trying to do 2-a-days. I've been trying to do 2-a-days with working out here and there, like not every day or 2-a-day. But like a couple of days a week, I've been trying to do 2-a-day workouts, right? And this one day I did a 2-a-day cardio twice, right? It wasn't even like weightlifting one day and then so like my perspective was just kind of outlandish. And so I did like the bike earlier in the morning, and then later on I went for a run. And I don't know, y'all, I guess I'm getting older. But the next day, oh my gosh, my knee, my muscles, oh my gosh. My husband's a chiropractor. I was like, I need help. I need help. I need help. See that pain that I kind of endured was a little self-inflicted. My perspective was actually a little off about what my capabilities were. Now I know that's just a quirky little example, but sometimes our perspective may be off. And sometimes when we are looking through the lens of, self-gratification, what am I getting out? Or if we're looking through a self-centered lens, here's the thing: a self-centered lens in a relationship, you're going to be more vulnerable or more likely to experience an offense because you're taking the entire relationship through the filter of what is this relationship doing for me. And that perspective can honestly create a higher likelihood of being wounded because it's a self serving perspective versus a serving perspective. Okay, so gonna shift gears and now look at healed behavior. And I always say that forgiveness preserves the best version of you, whether it may be a small slight, whether it may be you may be a neat freak, your husband or your spouse may not be, or your kids may not be. And it can be small things. But here's the thing is that unforgiveness eats away at you, whether it's a small thing or it's a big thing, and it can accumulate. All righty. And what I'm recognizing is that the bigger the offense, the more critical the forgiveness. But forgiveness is critical in general. But I always say that forgiveness preserves the best version of you. And you remember I was talking about wounded behavior. A lot of times when you are wounded, it causes you to walk in a distorted identity of yourself. Forgiveness helps you recapture who you really are. And it helps you to release you of the infection of the wound. But here's the thing, when you make the choice to forgive, or when you here's the thing, we've all had wounded experiences and wounded behavior. We just do not want to stay in that place for too long. That's the key. That's the kicker. Like, not staying in that wounded place too long, because then you can perpetuate your woundedness. And what happens is, the reality is that wounded people actually go on to become wounders. I don't even know if that's a word. But they when you think about, like, the person who may have wounded you, they may have been hurt or wounded in some kind of area that may need healing. And so when you make the choice to start your journey toward healing and those healed behaviors, what we see is that it's going to oftentimes be painful in the beginning. And my mom was always like, Cassandra, they killed Jesus. And I'm like, that's so right. They did. And while he was going through the pain of the cross, his perspective was right. My goodness. And that is another indication of healing, right? Instead of experiencing everything through the lens of your hurt, you have the right perspective on what happened to you, as well as the person. He said, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And so he was able to separate the people from the behavior. And that is a healing behavior, because that helps to heal the relationship. Now you can attack the issue or the concern, rather than trying to attack the person. Right? We don't want to attack the person. We definitely do not want to attack the person. And so and also too, that was painful. He was yet loving while going through pain. And that's what healed behaviors honestly look like. It's like antiseptic to get the infection out. It may actually burn. It may go, when you get a wound, you actually don't want alcohol to be put on it. You actually don't want the antiseptic to put on it, because you know it's going to burn. So here's the thing about healed behavior. Sometimes it burns when it comes to the pain. Sometimes it doesn't feel good. It's not what you're inclined to do. Like, even when you remember when you would scrape your knee, ride your bike down the hill, and your mom would have to put some peroxide or put some alcohol on it, it will burn, it will bubble up. And you want her to tend to it, but sometimes tending to it causes it a little bit more pain. Right? And so sometimes forgiving or loving, it may be painful, but it's actually promoting and jump starting the healing process. So forgiveness is a healed behavior. It's a healed behavior that promotes the healing, your healing, the healing of the relationship. Oh, it's so multifaceted, multi-layered with respect to its impact. All right. So multi-layered. And also too, it's like you are exercising a godly perspective. So when I was talking about, like, the Lord being on the cross and saying, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do," it's not, everything is not through the lens of the offense. It's not through the lens of the pain. Okay. And also too, it when you are walking in healed behavior, you're also walking in your true identity, because healed behavior allows you to let go. And now I'm going to kind of shift gears and talk about the, like, what does unhealed behavior or wounded behavior result in, and what does healed behavior result in. But whatever the infraction was, sometimes, you make your temper maybe a little a little shorter, and it's kind of like you're not standing in your true personhood. Okay. And so, in the results of, wounded behavior, it's like it results in a prison. It results in bondage. It constrains you. Also, the result of staying and sticking with wounded behavior, you may potentially wound others. That wounded behavior, even though you're trying to self protect, sometimes what happens is that can wound you as well as someone else, right? The person, as I always say, we know that saying, hurt people. We don't want to allow our wounded behavior to turn us into those people who hurt other people and be bound by that thing. Okay. Now, when it comes to healed behavior, it actually results in freedom. Another healed behavior I didn't talk about was actually being loving despite the pain and being kind. Ooh, that might burn. That's not naturally people's first inclination, right? But what that does is, one of my favorite, when I go into the forgiveness series, one of my favorite definitions of forgiveness is by Berkeley. They have this magazine called The Greater Good, and they talk about how you let go of the resentment and bitterness, and it frees you from the corrosive anger. We're thinking about not just relational health, but even physical health. It's oftentimes the corrosive anger that is attached to the unforgiveness that eats away at us, that eats away at the relationship, right? And so when you are able to forgive, when you're able to walk into these healed behaviors, what happens is it frees you. It brings about freedom. All righty. And then, now this is the kicker. People say, don't waste, the lessons that you're learning. And another part of this is, not when you are operating as a healed person, then you become a healer. Now you can help others in their healing journey. You can progress in your healing journey. And not only are you actively and really good at helping yourself, but now you're helping other people. All right. And that gives significance to, the little things that you're going through. And you can be a healer in your marriage or in your relationship. This is so powerful. So, so powerful. All righty. Now we're going to kind of go to our action steps for today. And our action steps, this is kind of like your homework. The first one is get support for your healing journey. In the beginning, you may need help because that thing may burn. And so you really want to get some help. Also, too, I want you to write down in your journal, consider what you would gain if you engaged in those healing behaviors, such as forgiveness, loving despite the pain, kindness, really letting go, walking in your true identity. What would you gain? And then also, I want you to think about, what would you lose if you continued to walk in wounded behavior? And then lastly, I want you to practice at least one or two of these healed behaviors. Think about one of your relationships that needs a little healing, that needs a little restoration, that needs a little extra tending and care. What I want you to do is consider one of these healed behaviors, whether it's forgiveness, whether it's the right godly perspective, whether it is whether it is walking in your true identity or whether it's loving and being kind despite the pain. Write it down. What is going to be your commitment this week to doing that? Well, all righty. I guess that wraps up our very first episode. I hope you join me again for our next episode. And I'm already enjoying you. Write me some questions if you have any. I would love to answer them and be of greater service to you. Love you, and I need it. And until next time, I'll see you later.